Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we are here with a soccer then and now video compared to basketball. So essentially what I am going to be doing is, we all sort of know the cliche, right, of what's happened with soccer and what's happened in general, where things were very low valued going up to 2020, then in 2020 things went crazy, 2021 things went crazier, and since it's been quite the fall. So what I'm going to do is chop off the higher plateau and compare back here to where we are, back here to where we are now, and sort of see how basketball and soccer have changed comparatively. A tool like Card Ladder, which is the website I'm on now and I use for most of my historical pricing, they have indexes that can give you an idea, but I do think the indexes are problematic. For example, here soccer is basically the exact same as basketball, 31 and 31, but the difference with basketball is you have, a ton of cards, 16,000 total cards, and I mean when you look at the diversity, 1987 Fleer, Modern Prism, inserts from the 90s, there's a lot of 70s cards. I mean there's a lot going on, while when you look at something like soccer and you go over to the cards there, it's 2018 Optic, Prism World Cup, Silver, Kimmich, I mean it's all stuff from recent. Sure, there might be a random, I mean this is a GOAT card thrown in, but for the most part it's just sort of random modern stuff. And so I think a lot of people get the idea that based on whatever the Card Ladder index says is the way the market's moving. I've done a whole video on this, but it made me interested, all right? Is soccer moving the same way as basketball when it comes to key cards? Because really that's what most people look to, and that's what we'll look at today. So I want to start by talking about why I compared soccer and basketball, and then we'll talk about how they're different too, because that's also important. But I do feel that both have younger demographics. I mean, it's pretty true empirically if you look at stats in the US at least, where things trend. They're both international as well, soccer being more international, but basketball being the most international of American sports. You also have rediscovery, where they weren't the most popular thing at one point and then became more popular. Basketball has a more prolonged history of being popular, while soccer is newer. And they also both have many eras with basketball. From what I understand, you can go back to the 40s, maybe earlier, and with soccer, you can go back to the 1800s. So they both have a long history of being released, maybe not necessarily being the most collectible thing, but they do have a long history of being there, compared to something like UFC or F1, which in terms of cards are relatively new. And then the differences we'll run through real quick. So high dollars in basketball is a commonality. Basketball is just much more expensive, a much more expansive collecting base. Soccer was also harder to deal in, I would say. As the world becomes more globalized, that becomes easier. Organic, inorganic, I think soccer just has a lot more collectors that do not care at all about values and just sort of have World Cup books and just collect for the fun of collecting, while I think basketball has different motives, and that leads to different collecting cultures that should also be noted. Not to say that anyone is right or wrong, but just to throw out there that this is not a one-to-one, so don't take it as gospel. So all that to get here, so I am going to be taking, for the most part, the earliest dates I can find for a lot of the soccer players, and then comparing it to a similar basketball player, a similar card, and seeing what it did over that time. So here we have the Haaland and the Luka. So for the Haaland, 653 in October of 2020. Now it is 471. So a decent bit of a drop, as we can see there. Luka base PSA 10 Prism was 1308 and is now 246. So from being twice as expensive as Haaland to being about half as expensive as Haaland, which is obviously going to lead to a pretty big percentage loss when you look at the Luka. I feel that these are both basically the same sort of player, near the same rookie year, same sort of hype in the hobby. Obviously, Haaland, going to Man City, winning a treble is going to help him, while Luka has, made all-star teams and done great things. Hasn't won anything massive like Haaland has. And comparatively, not a great look for Luka here. There will be 7 players in total, so this is just one of 7. I was going to compare different cards, but honestly, in most of the cases, when you see something like this, is it really going to help to compare silvers or color matches? I mean, it's all going to basically be the same sort of trend. So it is what it is. Player number 2, or comparison number 2, here we have Pele and Jordan. Felt like, despite being different eras, both similar, hype within the game. All-time greats. I picked the Aquarella because it's basically the most transacted Pele that you just see a lot, which, compares to the Fleer in that sense. As you can see at the bottom left, I am essentially saying Pele Aquarella is the Fleer Jordan of our hobby. That's not what I'm saying at all, but the Aquarella is going to give you the more precise sort of angle on where the market's at for Pele at this moment. There is a little bit of bias inherently that the Aquarella is desired in this current market. In another world, maybe the Gazzetta gets as desired as this or the Record, but those are both cutouts, so I don't really see it. Nonetheless, here we have Pele with 610 in April 2017 to 6,600 here in July. So that's going to be a pretty substantial gain. Jordan also with a good gain from 1,600 to 7,500. Here we have almost an 1,100% increase compared to a 460. I then did Mbappe versus Giannis because those seem pretty comparable. Their peak was near the same time frame in the hobby. And so I felt it was right to compare Mbappe's sticker 2016, his true rookie, to the Giannis base. Now, I feel like that's pretty fair. Stickers aren't, terribly uncommon, so you can find those easily. Same thing goes with Prism, even though that was lower print relative. But we have $80 for Mbappe compared to now where it's $900, while with Giannis it was $240 compared to now where it is $800. All in all, 1,100% for Mbappe, $330 for Giannis. I'd like to point out, and you can question it if you want, but you can look back at the graphs. I picked random spots, and usually I would try to pick lower for soccer cards if possible, just because, as you can see, the numbers are pretty crazy, so I don't want to, blow it up even more. But yeah, I'm not picking high sales. If need be, I take averages, and that's sort of where we land. Next, we have Maradona versus Wilt. Felt like that was reasonable in terms of, I guess, era and, caliber of player. We went from July 2016 to now. I chose the Calciatore Maradona because basically it transacts the most. It's a very, notable card within the Maradona market, and people just notice it. It's very noticeable. And if I'm being honest, it's really hard to compare like a 77 disc because in high grades, they've multiplied so much more than in low grades. So to take one grade and say that's accurate feels dishonest. So here I use the Panini Calciatore Maradona, which went from 104 in July of 2016 to 2,800 now, while the Wilt went from 1,000 to 3,000. Obviously, this is not going to be close at all. 2,700 to 300. This is, to me, this has always been one of the scarier buys in the market. I'm a big Maradona guy, and I am terrified to buy the Panini Calciatore for that reason. I understand its historical significance. It is the most graded card in vintage, but for good reason. As you can see, people do like it. Now, next, we go to Cruyff and Kareem. Here, basically, we have Cruyff Palarex going from 320 to 1,900, and then we have the Lou Alcindor or Kareem for that moved from 610 to 2,800. Here, we have 580% to 460. So relatively, small victory for soccer. But again, that's pretty close and not anything too crazy. Typically, the Palarexes look better than that. That's not a good picture with good adjustments by me, so I'll take the blame on that one. And then second to last, we'll go to the Ronaldo versus Steph comparison here. We went from February 2017 to now. In February 2017, the Ronaldo in a PSA 9 was 200, and now the card ladder value has it at 3,500. Realistically, I don't think that card ladder value is right. The last one transacted at $5,000, and there have been PSA 8s that have sold for basically this card ladder value. So I honestly think it's probably closer to, 5,000-6,000 maybe. Nonetheless, comparable to Steph, he went from 550 to 7,500. Here, this basically, again, small victory for soccer, 1,500 to 1,350. And again, like I mentioned, if the card ladder value is closer to the accurate value, I would say that that's probably, 5,000-6,000, which would be well over a 2,000% increase. Again, talking about big numbers like that is a little scary, but we'll put it in reference here in a second. Finally, we have Messi versus LeBron. So this is July 2017 until now. We have the 71 bits in a PSA 9 going from 1,500 to 22,000, while the Ronaldo Topps Chrome Refractor went from 4,600 to 28.9 thousand. Here, finally, we have a 1,500% increase from soccer and a 600% increase from the LeBron. all in all, that is a clean sweep for soccer. I didn't do any of the numbers. I didn't pick cards based off of which one did higher or lower on certain. I just, in my head, I made the mental map of how I wanted this video to go, what cards I thought were comparable, and I just compared them. I didn't have the intent of having soccer win every one. I honestly think that makes it look worse. I'd rather basketball win one, but it is what it is. Just going back through them, pretty big wins in some of them, and other ones are closer. So not to say that basketball hasn't done good. I think basketball has done good. But as I mentioned, now we can go through and talk about sort of where they are now and how things have moved the last 6 months. Because while we did compare pre-boom to now, I want to compare post-boom to now and sort of how that's going. So we'll start off with the last 6 months. Here we have the Haaland and Luka comparison. Haaland is down 25%, while the Luka is down 50%. Next, we have the Pele Aquarela versus the MJ. The MJ edges it out by a bit at -2 compared to -8. Then we have the Mbappe sticker that is up 3%, while the Giannis Prism's down 27. We have the Maradona Calciatore that's up 40, while the Wilt is up 10. Then we have the Cruyff down 18, while the Lual Sindor is down 2. And then we have a Ronaldo PSA 9 that is up anywhere from 15 to 80%. Now, the reason I say that is I had to take the PSA 8 price, and the PSA 8 is up anywhere from 15 to 80%, depending on if you count the most recent high sale. I'm just going to throw in there that, maybe you count it, maybe you don't, but it doesn't affect what's going to be shown here, so take it for what you will. Then the Steph's negative 21% comparatively, and then finally the Messi is at a 35% increase, and the LeBron's down 46%, which is just massive to me. I mean, being down as much as a Luka base, even though that's like one of the iconic cards in basketball, it's pretty crazy. So all in all, when you add that all up, divide, basically soccer's up anywhere from 6 to 15% on these main cards, while basketball's down at close to 20%. And so that's where we stand. The last 6 months, basically, soccer's shown much more of a floor than basketball has during a time when you wouldn't have expected that at all. Obviously, you could pick different cards, you could pick different prices, you can do this however you want, but I think the results will still play out in the same sort of way. Also, just keep in mind, it's very hard to, compare cards one-to-one. So, I did my best. I tried my hardest. And really, that's all you can do at the end of the day. So, in conclusion, we can draw a few things here, I believe. The first is collect/buy what you like or believe in. I think that just generally should be the rule of thumb going forward, no matter, what the situation is. Try to guide yourself. I think that's the right way to go about it. Of course, learn and pick up stuff along the way. I think, like something like this video is great as a data point, as something to look at, but it shouldn't be the basis for how you go about whatever you're doing. I will say, like I mentioned before, soccer is showing strength in what should be, essentially a terrible time for soccer, which to me is encouraging. I think that shows good things. I don't know how you could argue otherwise, but at the same time, that doesn't mean that, skies are great. The clouds are out of the way. The rainbows are everywhere. Like there's still, concerns to be had and things to think about, of course. While with basketball, it hasn't shown really any floor at all. And that's, something that I didn't know going into this, to be honest. I don't follow basketball. Basketball could have been up 10, 20, 30% on some of those, and I wouldn't have known. I don't think people are going to make a huge deal about it, so I don't think it would have been pushed all over my Instagram, but I didn't think that it was as bad as it was. And then that leads me to the final main one, which is trust your own instincts. This is more so just a slight at the people that talk bad about soccer without understanding it at all, and really can only name maybe 5 players in the sport, yet they want to have a take on the collectible market as a whole, even though they know nothing. Don't let those people affect you. This might be as much for me as for you guys, but I'm sure it affects all of us to an extent. If you do consume sports card content, most people don't know or talk soccer, and if they do, it's 50-50 on how they feel. And, even the people that feel good about soccer sometimes don't do it in the right way. So you always have to evaluate that. And, I highly recommend you to, think further on those topics and just trust yourself at the end of the day. But with that said, that's going to be it for me. If you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like. Would also love to hear your thoughts down below on what you think of this video. And if you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. But with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day and peace.